Welcome to week 4 of our Everyday Word Bible study. We got all kinds of fun things to look at today. We have sexual innuendo, we have family squabbles, we have lots of things, so let's get started. First of all, we started on chapter 36, which some of you might think is kind of boring, because the whole chapter we go through down list after list of Esau's descendants. Why? Why would this be included in God's Word? Well, let me ask you this question. Do you have a genealogy? You do. Every human being does. And so, just like the people of the Old Testament, and this eventually would lead to Jesus, these people have a genealogy as well. It also shows us that Abraham, God had promised, would make him a great nation. His descendants would be as the stars of the sky. We think of Israel, but other nations had their beginning in Abraham as well. If you think about it, in the United States, Salt Lake City has the largest genealogical library in the world. Do you know what the second largest genealogical library is in the United States? You'll never guess it. It's Allen County Public Library in Fort Wayne, Indiana. How do I know this? Because my mother-in-law does genealogy, and she has the family traced all the way back to the 1500s, and we used to give her German marks for Christmas so that she could send it over and do more genealogy in Germany. And she got this started when my father-in-law was at the seminary. So again, we as human beings have a genealogy. These people are historical people. This isn't just a make-believe thing. This isn't just a spiritual thing. This is human history. And so God in human history tells us everything that's going on, and you'll find many different genealogies in the Bible. And again, it tells us, here is the truth, here is history, here is God working in the world. Then we move to the next chapter, 37. And we're introduced to the family again. At this point, we have the 11 sons of Jacob. Joseph is the youngest, and he has 3 strikes against him. His brothers do not like him. First of all, he is Jacob's favorite. Why? Go back to the birth wars. Do you remember? You had Leah, and she had sons, and you had Bilhah, her servant, she had sons, and you had Rachel's servant Zipporah, she had sons, and Rachel doesn't have any children. Finally, the youngest, Joseph, is born of Rachel. So here is the only son of Rachel. And again, who did Jacob want to marry? It wasn't Leah. He was tricked into that marriage. Rachel was the love of his life. And so therefore he had this favoritism toward Jacob. There's a couple other reasons for hating him. Being the youngest, he didn't go out in the field with the others. Dad kept him safe at home. But occasionally he would send him out to the brothers. And apparently the last time he had come back with a bad report. Hey, my older brothers, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. And he gets them in trouble with Dad. And if you listen carefully, Joseph is sent out to find his brothers, and they're not where they're supposed to be. They have moved. Were they supposed to move? Were they in the area that they're not supposed to be? We don't know. But if they were, guess what? Joseph would be sure to report it to his father. So, the third reason, he had dreams. And he would tell his dreams to his brothers. You remember the first dream? He saw the sheaves. There were these bundles of sheaves of wheat, like kind of we have corn in bundles here in the Midwest, and they are all bowing down to him. The whole family was going to bow down to little Joseph, the favorite of the family. Boy, that makes our heart feel warm. Not. And then he goes on and says, oh yeah, and I saw the sun and the moon and the stars. They were all bowing down to me as well. And even his father questions him at this. You mean the sun, the father, the moon, the mother, and the 11 stars, his brothers, are all going to bow down to him? Who does he think he is? And yet we'll see later that God fulfills these dreams. It's for these reasons he has 3 strikes against him, and when his brothers see him coming, their counsel is, let us kill him. Let us get rid of this guy. He is causing us so much trouble. Away with him. So when he comes, they grab him, they take off his coat, and they throw him down in a well to keep him there. And it says Reuben, the oldest, had plans that later he would come back and rescue him. And then Judah has a better plan. Hey, look, there's Ishmaelites traders. Let's go sell them and we can get some profit for it. And that's exactly what they do. They sell them for 20 shekels, about 20 ounces of silver that today would be about $500. Better yet, though, they get rid of their brother. And to cover their tracks, they slaughter a lamb, they take the blood, they pour it upon his coat, and they bring it back to the father. You know, this wonderful coat that you made special just for Joseph? Well, we found it stained with blood. Oh, our poor Joseph, he must have been eaten by wild beasts. There you have it. We're done with Joseph. We never have to see him again, and we're $500 in advance. We're doing good. Then we see a little change. We take this one chapter away from Joseph's story and jump to the story about Tamar. Now, if you've never read through the Bible before and you're reading it for the first time, you might be going to yourself, where did all of this stuff come from? I mean, this is not rated PG. This is kind of moving towards the R stuff. You have adultery and prostitutes and all kinds of things. Yep, you find it in the Bible. And God points out all the warts on the people in the Old Testament. Why does he do that? I think he does it to remind us that he loves us despite our sin. There is no sin that you have committed that you probably are not going to find in the Old Testament. And what did God do? He loved them and forgave them just like he does us. So back to Tamar. Tamar became the husband of Shua, the son of Judah. Unfortunately, Shua was not a good guy, and eventually God allowed him to be killed. And so his brother, Er, was asked to take her as his wife and to provide a child to carry on the family name. You see, back then it was very important that the family name be carried on, that you had a male descendant that would take care of the land and your name and your property. Later on, this would be codified in the book of Leviticus. It was called the Levirate law, that if a person died and had no male heir, that the next of kin, the closest relative, would provide that service, and that child that was born would be considered the dead person's son and would take all the legal rights of the family. And we see a precursor of this. Well, doesn't want to take that responsibility, and he kind of makes sure that it doesn't happen. And so we're to the third son. When Shelah becomes old enough that he should be given as a levirate partner for Tamar, he doesn't want to do it. Judah doesn't want to make him, and it's just forgotten. So what does Tamar do? She dresses herself as a prostitute, sits on the side of the road, and tempts Judah, and Judah and her have intercourse together, and lo and behold, she becomes pregnant, and there you have it. Now, a couple of things there. One, what is Judah looking for a prostitute for? Not a very pure, righteous person. Isn't he one of the people that's going to become the 12 tribes of Israel? Yeah, but he was a sinner. And yet God used that situation, and Tamar tricked him. And when she is found to be pregnant, and they're like, oh, you're in trouble now. You had sexual relationships outside of marriage. Who is the father? She provides a cord and signet ring. It is Judah. And Judah has to confess. She has done the righteous thing. I should have followed through. I should have had done and had given her an heir, and I did not. And so things end up, I guess, the right way they're supposed to. She has a male heir, the family line continues, and so on. Now we jump back to Joseph. Joseph goes sold as a slave to Egypt, and he's sold to Potiphar. And Potiphar sees great potential in this young man. And it isn't very long before literally he becomes the head of the whole household. He's the top steward. Everything is under his control, and guess what happened? It prospers. So, as things are going well, we see that not only does he catch the eye of the husband, Potiphar, who thinks, hey, everything is under control, he also catches the eye of Potiphar's wife, who says, young man, young and ambitious, hey, come sleep with me. Here we find a righteous person. Joseph says, no, I will not do it. Time and time and time again, we see Joseph being asked to do this sin, to betray his master Potiphar, and time again, he says, no. Well, there's nothing like a woman scorned, right? You've heard that saying before. So eventually Potiphar's wife says, enough is enough. When Joseph eludes him once again and she grabs his garment and he goes away half naked, here's her chance. She cries out and claims rape. Look what this guy tried to do to me. And she falsely accuses him. And again, being a foreigner, having no one on his side, he is thrown in jail falsely for a crime that he did not commit. Now he's in jail. Guess what happens? It's not very long before the head jailer realizes, hey, this guy has potential. And quickly he goes through the ranks until he is in charge of all the other prisoners. Now, he's still in prison, but you can imagine if he's placed ahead of all the others that his accommodations are a little bit better. So God is taking care of him even in prison. And then you get the two VIP prisoners. You get the baker and the cupbearer from Pharaoh. These would be VIPs, and guess who's put in charge of them? Joseph. And he cares for them. Now, I have to admit, when I had these stories in Sunday school, I kind of thought, okay, they were arrested, Pharaoh got mad at them, they threw them in prison, they were there a couple of days, they had the dream, and then what happened. But actually, if you're looking carefully, that's not what it says. If you look at the text, verse 4, chapter 40, it says, they continued for some time in custody. Guess what? They were there for a while. Not a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, could even be a few months. It wasn't a full year, and we'll know that in a second, because Pharaoh's birthday comes along. But they're there for a while, and Joseph takes care of them. After that while, one night they both have a dream. And they're disturbed by it. They know these dreams mean something, but what do they mean? And having a relationship with Joseph, Joseph says, why don't you tell me your dreams? And they do. First, you have the cupbearer. He sees this vine, and there are 3 branches that come out of it, and suddenly there are grapes, and he squeezes the grapes into the cup, and he gives the cup to Pharaoh. What does it mean? Well, Joseph says the 3 branches are 3 days, and in 3 days, you're going to be restored to your previous place, and you're going to be the cupbearer for Pharaoh once again. And you can imagine the joy that man had. If this comes true, I'm going to get out of prison restored. Great! And then you have the baker. Wow, that was a very good interpretation. Let me tell you mine. Yeah, I dreamed that there were 3 baskets full of bread, and they were on my head, and the birds began plucking them and eating them on my head. What does it mean? Expecting something good, Joseph says just the opposite. I'm sorry, but the 3 baskets are 3 days. And in 3 days, you're going to be executed. Not exactly the message he wanted to hear, but it's exactly what happened. For in 3 days was Pharaoh's birthday. And so he decides to do things. One is custom to release a prisoner, and it's also customary to get rid of your enemies on your birthday. I mean, what could you do with a better present than, I got an enemy, cut off his head, or hang him? Sounds like a good thing to do. So that's what he does. So on the 3rd day, the cupbearer is taken out of prison, he is cleaned, he's dressed, and he begins to serve Pharaoh once again. And the baker, he's taken out and hanged. Now, what did Joseph say? Hey, when you go and you're restored, remember me. Did he? Nope, didn't happen. He went back to his position and he forgot all about Joseph and the interpretation of the dreams and everything that he had done for him. Now, in the New Testament, there's a Greek word that is day, which means it is necessary. It was necessary at this time and at this place because God had a plan, and at just the right time, these things would happen. In fact, we hear from Romans 5, verse 6, that at just the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. God has his plans. And so it was his plan to wait. 2 years, Joseph continues in prison. And then one day, Pharaoh has a dream. And it's a very disturbing dream. He has a dream that there are 7 fat cows eaten by 7 ugly cows. And then he had another dream. There are 7 good grains replaced by 7 thin and blighted grain. And it disturbs him. And he asks his wise men, what does it mean? And no one can tell him the meaning of his dream. And it's at that time the cupbearer says, you know what? When I was in prison, I had a dream. And there was this man there, Joseph. He was able to interpret my dream. And so they call Joseph. They clean him up because he's going to be appearing before the Pharaoh. And Pharaoh asks him, can you interpret dreams? And he says, I can't, but God can. And Pharaoh, if you tell me your dream, God will interpret it for you. So again, you see the heart of Joseph. He is humble and he recognizes God and his power. So Pharaoh tells him the dream. Tells him how he saw out of the Nile, and again, that's the center of Egypt. He sees 7 fat cows lazing around, eating, everything is great. And then out of the Nile comes another 7 thin and ugly cows. They don't look very good. And they eat the fat cows. And then again, he sees 7 great bundles of grain, the best you could find. And then 7 blighted come out, and they eat the 7 good, and they're replaced. What could this possibly mean? Well, Joseph tells him, because you have 2 dreams, not just one, it is fixed. Sometimes God tells his plans to mankind with the idea if they repent, he will relent and not carry out that destruction. But 2 dreams means this is set. No matter what Pharaoh does, this is going to happen. There are going to be 7 great years where there's going to be a bountiful harvest. Everything's going to be great. And it's going to be followed by 7 great years of famine. But Joseph doesn't stop there. He goes on and gives Pharaoh a plan. If I were you, Pharaoh, you know what I would do? During those 7 years when you have a bumper crop and everything is going well, take 1/5 of that produce and store it up in the barns and keep it there so that when the 7 years of famine come, you'll get some food, but not enough. You have grain that's stored away, and it will see you through this whole time. And Pharaoh goes, that's a great plan. Where can we find a man full of the Spirit of God who will carry out such a mission? Joseph, you're it. On the spot, he appoints Joseph. I guess we would call him vice president now. He was second in command in Egypt. He would sit in his chariot and he would follow Pharaoh. Everyone would bow down to him, and he was given authority over everything except for what Pharaoh himself said. What a change. He was probably in his mid-teens when he's thrown into the well and sold into slavery. Now he's 30 years old after spending all that time in prison. And guess what? Now he's a leader of Egypt. He has all the credentials you can imagine. And the king does one more thing. He gives him a Asenath as a wife. You're going to be married to this woman. Now, arranged marriages were a lot more common back then, and they were done for treaties and other things. And it's interesting. This foreign woman who becomes married to Joseph, Scripture usually talks about not marrying foreigners because they were afraid they would lead them away from God and lead them to worship false gods. But in this case, God doesn't say anything about marrying a foreigner. In fact, he has arranged it. You see, by marrying Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, he all of a sudden is given status. He is marrying into one of the high-class people. And suddenly he has a family and he has the social status that he didn't have before. Why was this such an important thing? Well, we see that Potiphar, no relationship to Potiphar, names are close but not the same, was a priest of On. On was a city about 10 miles northeast of Cairo. Later on, the Greeks would call it Heliopolis, city of the sun. And there was a temple to Ra. You perhaps have seen Ra in hieroglyphics. This is what he looked like. Ra was the creator. He was the king of all the other ones. Using different mythology, he was the Zeus. He was the head over all the other gods. And so this gave them status. And as a priest of the highest god, it also was a cultural center, an intellectual center. And they were known for these things. So if you came from there and you were up the upper crust, you were someone important. And suddenly Joseph has married into that family. And God seems to arrange it, because she becomes the mother of 2 of the tribes of Israel. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, so that's a cliffhanger we'll look at in a couple of chapters down the road. Going back to the family, Jacob's family. They're back in Canaan. They haven't had dreams. Their leaders don't know this great famine is coming, and it hits. And it hits hard. And pretty soon their cupboards are bare, there's nothing to eat, and they hear, hey, there's food. There's food in Egypt if you want to go there, and if you have the money to buy it. But of course, Jacob is a very rich man. And so he sends the brothers. Well, not quite all the brothers. He sends the 10, but Benjamin, Joseph's younger brother, married by Rachel, who dies in childbirth, he keeps back. He's already lost Joseph, and Benjamin, he's not going to lose him. It's the only remembrance of Rachel that he has. So he sends the 10, and they go. And guess what they find? They find food. And they find Joseph, but they don't know it's Joseph because he was a little boy, and now he's actually a ruler in Egypt, so who would have thought? And as they're talking through an interpreter, he begins to treat them very harshly. You are here as spies. Why are you here? I should just throw you in jail. Why should I give you food? And they defend themselves, and they say, no, we're just 10 brothers of a father who lives in Canaan, and we're here to buy food. We're not spies or anything like that. And on the sidebar, they're talking about, we're getting such a hard time because of what we did to Joseph. God is punishing us. Of course, they're speaking in their own language, not the language of Egypt. And with an interpreter, they didn't realize that Joseph, their younger brother, knew exactly what they were saying. So eventually he says, all right, I will make this deal with you. You go, I'll give you what you need, one of you stays. And if you ever come back, you better bring Benjamin with me. By the way, how's Dad doing? Because he wanted to hear about his father as well. So eventually Simeon's chosen. He remains behind. The other 9 go back with the food. And when they open their bags, there's food, but all the money that they paid for it, it's in their bags. In other words, they got free food. What does this mean? Well, that food's not going to last forever. And eventually it ran out. And it's time to go back to Egypt to get more food. And Jacob goes, yeah, but you're not taking Benjamin. And they're like, we can't go back unless we bring Benjamin. But I've already lost Joseph, and now I lost Simeon because he's still in Egypt. I'm not sending Benjamin. Finally, Reuben says, I will give you my 2 sons as a pledge. You may kill them if I don't come back with Benjamin. We need to take Benjamin. And so they go with Benjamin. And they go, and once again, they meet with him. They see Simeon. You have this great family reunion. You see Joseph seeing Benjamin and his whole family, and he begins to weep and has to step out for a minute because he's overcome with emotion. And he tests his brother. They sit down for a nice meal. And again, they're hungry. They're coming from famine-ravaged land. And they have this nice 6-ounce piece of steak in front of them. And Benjamin has this nice 30-ounce piece of steak in front of him. Yes, Benjamin's plate has 5 times as much food as all the rest. He's getting preferential treatment. How are they going to react? Then he sends them on their way. But he hides his silver chalice in Benjamin's bag. They go a little way from the town. Suddenly the armies come and stop them and say, "What are you doing stealing from my master?" "We didn't steal. Check our bags. May the one who is found be found guilty." Benjamin's bag is opened, and there's the chalice with the money. Uh-oh. As they go back, they're in big trouble. It's Judah who begins to plead. Don't keep Benjamin. If you need to punish someone, punish me. I am the one. You remember? It was Judah's idea to sell Joseph into slavery. So, that's where we stop. What's going to happen? Will Benjamin be put to death? Will Judah take his place? Will Jacob ever see his sons again? Well, you're going to have to wait till next week to find out. Thanks for tuning in.